The wind whispered secrets through the tall grass as Sarah, a woman weathered by the sun and hardened by the land, surveyed her small homestead. She was a solitary figure, her days filled with the rhythm of survival, tending her garden, hunting for game, and mending her worn leather clothes. Her cabin, built with her own 2 hands, stood as a testament to her resilience, a small haven carved out of the vast, untamed wilderness. Sarah wasn't born to this life. She came west seeking freedom, leaving behind the constraints of a life she no longer wanted. She learned to track, to hunt, to build, to survive. The wilderness had become her teacher, and she, a dedicated student. She knew the dangers of this land, the harsh winters, the scarce resources, and the wild animals that roamed freely. But she also knew its beauty, its quiet strength, and the sense of peace that settled over her as she watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues. Little did she know, her peaceful existence was about to be disrupted, not by danger, but by an act of bravery that would forever change her life and the lives of those around her. A change that would cement her name in the tales shared around crackling fires. This chapter in her life was about to begin, and it started with a sound, a desperate cry echoing through the trees. A cry for help that would set her on a path toward a future she could never have imagined. A future intertwined with the fate of a young Cherokee boy and his entire tribe. Not far from Sarah's cabin, nestled in a valley where the river snaked like a silver ribbon, lay the village of the Cherokee. They were a people deeply connected to the land, their lives interwoven with the seasons and the spirits of the forest. Their homes, crafted from wood and earth, blended seamlessly into the landscape, a testament to their respect for nature. The tribe was led by Chief Many Trees, a man known for his wisdom and his gentle strength. He guided his people with a steady hand, always seeking harmony and balance. But it was the children of the tribe who brought the most joy to the village. Their laughter echoed through the trees, their playful games filling the air with energy. Among these children was Little Bear. He was a boy of boundless curiosity, his eyes always searching, his mind always questioning. He loved to explore the woods, to discover hidden trails, and to learn the secrets of the animals. Unlike the other children who stayed close to the village, Little Bear often wandered off, his adventurous spirit leading him deeper into the wilderness. His mother often warned him about the dangers that lurked in the forest, the mountain lions, the wolves, and the bears. But Little Bear's curiosity always outweighed his fear. He believed that the forest held more wonders than dangers, and he was determined to uncover them all. This curiosity, however, would soon lead him into a situation far more perilous than he could have ever imagined, a situation where his life would hang in the balance, and where the fate of his tribe would unknowingly be set on a new course. The sun dappled through the leaves as Little Bear ventured further than he ever had before. He followed a winding creek, its banks lined with vibrant wildflowers he'd never seen near the village. Butterflies, their wings like painted jewels, flitted around him, leading him onward. He was so engrossed in his exploration that he lost track of time and distance. He rounded a bend in the creek and stopped, his eyes widening in amazement. Before him stood a towering oak tree, its branches reaching towards the sky like gnarled fingers. At the base of the tree, he saw something that made his heart leap with excitement, a patch of wild berries, plump and juicy, unlike any he had ever tasted. He forgot his mother's warnings, forgot the potential dangers, and rushed towards the berries. He began to eat them greedily, savoring their sweetness. He didn't notice the rustling in the bushes nearby. He didn't hear the snapping of twigs under heavy paws. He was completely oblivious to the danger that was stalking him. Suddenly, a low growl shattered the tranquility of the forest. Little Bear froze, his blood turning to ice. He slowly turned his head and gasped. Standing between him and the creek, its massive frame blocking out the sunlight, was a grizzly bear. Its eyes, small and beady, were fixed on him, and its teeth, long and sharp, were bared in a menacing snarl. Little Bear knew, in that instant, that he was in terrible danger, and his adventurous spirit was replaced by a primal fear. He was alone, and he was facing a creature that could easily end his life. A terrified scream ripped through the air, a sound that carried on the wind, reaching Sarah's ears even from her distant cabin. She paused from chopping wood, her axe suspended mid-swing. The cry was filled with such raw fear that it sent a shiver down her spine. She recognized it as the voice of a child. Without hesitation, she dropped the axe and grabbed her rifle, a trusty companion that had seen her through countless dangers. She knew that a child's scream in the wilderness meant only one thing: trouble. And in this land, trouble often came in the form of a wild animal. She raced through the trees, her movements swift and silent, her senses on high alert. She followed the sound of the screams, which were becoming more frantic and desperate. As she drew closer, she could hear the unmistakable roar of a grizzly bear, a sound that could strike fear into the heart of even the bravest hunter. She burst into a clearing and saw the scene unfold before her. The grizzly bear, a monstrous beast of fur and muscle, stood over Little Bear, who was cowering on the ground, his face buried in his hands. The bear was pawing at him, its claws extended, ready to strike. Sarah knew that she had only seconds to act. If she hesitated, the boy would be lost. She raised her rifle, took aim, and fired. The shot echoed through the forest, piercing the air like a thunderclap. The bear roared in pain and surprise, momentarily distracted. It was Sarah's chance. The bullet had struck the bear's shoulder, enraging the already formidable creature. It turned its fury on Sarah, its eyes blazing with rage. Little Bear remained frozen, paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend what was happening. He could only watch as Sarah stepped between him and the monstrous beast. Sarah knew she had to keep the bear's attention on her. She couldn't allow it to turn back to Little Bear. She stood her ground, her rifle held steady, her gaze unwavering. The bear charged, its massive body a blur of fur and claws. Sarah dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the bear's swipe. She fired again, hitting the bear in the leg. The bear roared in pain, but it didn't stop. It continued its relentless attack, driven by instinct and rage. Sarah knew she couldn't keep this up for long. She was running out of ammunition, and the bear was showing no signs of giving up. She needed to find a way to end this quickly. She remembered a trick she had learned from an old mountain man, a way to exploit the bear's weakness. As the bear lunged again, Sarah dropped her rifle and grabbed a large branch that lay on the ground. She held it out in front of her, bracing herself for the impact. The bear charged headfirst into the branch, its momentum momentarily stunned. It was the opening Sarah needed. With a swift movement, she pulled out her hunting knife and lunged forward, plunging the blade deep into the bear's heart. The bear roared one last time, a sound that echoed through the forest, before collapsing to the ground, its massive body shaking with its final breaths. Sarah stood over the fallen beast, her chest heaving, her body trembling with exhaustion. She had faced death and emerged victorious. But the battle was far from over. The real challenge was just beginning. Sarah turned her attention to Little Bear, who was still huddled on the ground, trembling with fear. She approached him cautiously, her voice gentle and reassuring. "It's over now," she said softly. "The bear is gone. You're safe." Little Bear slowly lifted his head, his eyes wide with disbelief. He looked at the lifeless bear, then at Sarah, his rescuer. He had never seen anyone so brave, so strong. He was in awe of her courage and her skill. Sarah knelt beside him and examined him for injuries. He had a few scratches and bruises, but nothing serious. She breathed a sigh of relief. "You're lucky," she said. "It could have been much worse." She helped him to his feet and led him to the creek. She washed his face and hands, cleaning the dirt and blood from his skin. As she tended to his wounds, she noticed the fear slowly fading from his eyes, replaced by a sense of gratitude and respect. "What's your name?" she asked. "Little Bear," he whispered. "I'm Sarah," she replied. "Now, Little Bear, let's get you home." She knew that the journey back to his village would be long and difficult, but she was determined to get him back safely. She had saved his life, and she wasn't about to abandon him now. She had a feeling that this was just the beginning of their story, a story that would bind their fates together in ways she couldn't yet imagine. A story that would test her courage, her strength, and her compassion. A story that would change her life forever. The journey back to the Cherokee village was slow and arduous. Little Bear was still shaken by his encounter with the grizzly, and Sarah kept a watchful eye on him, making sure he didn't overexert himself. She shared her water and some dried meat with him, teaching him about the edible plants along the way. As they walked, Little Bear began to open up, telling Sarah about his family, his friends, and his life in the village. He spoke of Chief Many Trees with reverence, describing him as a wise and just leader. He talked about his mother, who made the best cornbread in the world. He even confessed his love for exploring, despite the dangers it sometimes brought. Sarah listened patiently, learning about the Cherokee people and their way of life. She realized that they were a peaceful and resourceful tribe, deeply connected to the land and respectful of its creatures. She began to feel a sense of respect for them, a respect that grew with each passing mile. Finally, as the sun began to set, they reached the edge of the village. Little Bear pointed towards the cluster of homes nestled in the valley below. "That's my home," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "My family is there." Sarah smiled, relieved that their journey was finally over. She knew that Little Bear would be safe now, surrounded by his loved ones. But as she prepared to say goodbye, she couldn't shake the feeling that her role in this story was far from over. She had saved Little Bear's life, and she knew that the Cherokee people would never forget her kindness. She just didn't know yet the full extent of their gratitude and the profound impact it would have on her future. As they entered the village, Little Bear broke away from Sarah and ran towards his home, shouting his mother's name. The entire village erupted in a flurry of activity. People rushed out of their homes, their faces etched with worry. Little Bear's mother ran towards him, her eyes filled with tears of relief. She embraced him tightly, showering him with kisses. Chief Many Trees approached Sarah, his gaze steady and respectful. "You have brought back our Little Bear," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "We are in your debt." Sarah simply nodded, feeling a little overwhelmed by the attention. She was used to being alone, and this sudden outpouring of gratitude was a bit unnerving. Later that evening, after Little Bear had eaten a hearty meal and rested, he gathered the tribe around the campfire. He recounted his adventure in vivid detail, his voice filled with emotion. He described the terrifying encounter with the grizzly bear, the fear that had gripped him, and the moment when Sarah had appeared like an angel, bravely confronting the beast. He spoke of her courage, her skill, and her kindness. He described how she had tended to his wounds, shared her food, and guided him back to the village. He painted a picture of Sarah that was larger than life, a hero who had saved him from certain death. The tribe listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear, gratitude, and awe. They had always known that the wilderness was a dangerous place, but Little Bear's story brought the reality of that danger into sharp focus. They also realized the depth of Sarah's bravery and the magnitude of her kindness. They knew that they had to find a way to repay her for her selfless act. The question was, how? How could they possibly repay someone who had saved the life of one of their own? The night air was filled with the crackling of the campfire and the murmur of voices as the Cherokee tribe debated how to express their gratitude to Sarah. Chief Many Trees listened patiently, his wise eyes observing the faces around him. He knew that this decision was important, not only for Sarah, but for the entire tribe. Some suggested offering her gifts, finely crafted blankets, intricately woven baskets, and valuable furs. Others proposed sharing their harvest with her, ensuring that she would never go hungry. Still others argued that they should teach her their secrets of the forest, sharing their knowledge of medicinal plants and hunting techniques. However, Chief Many Trees felt that none of these gestures were sufficient. They were all material things, valuable in their own right, but they didn't truly capture the depth of their gratitude. He believed that Sarah deserved something more, something that reflected the profound impact she had had on their lives. He raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "We must offer her something more than gifts," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "We must offer her something that comes from the heart. We must offer her our loyalty." The tribe was silent, considering his words. Loyalty was a sacred bond among the Cherokee people, a commitment that was not taken lightly. It meant offering protection, support, and unwavering allegiance. It was the highest honor they could bestow upon someone. Some were hesitant. Sarah was an outsider, a woman who lived apart from them. Could they truly trust her with their loyalty? Could they be sure that she would always act in their best interests? Chief Many Trees understood their concerns, but he also knew that Sarah had proven her worth. She had risked her life to save Little Bear, showing a level of courage and compassion that was rare and precious. He believed that she was worthy of their trust, worthy of their loyalty. He just needed to convince the rest of the tribe. The next morning, as the sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, the entire Cherokee tribe gathered outside Sarah's cabin. Chief Many Trees led the procession, his face solemn and his bearing dignified. Behind him, the tribe carried an array of gifts, finely crafted blankets adorned with intricate patterns, baskets overflowing with fresh fruits and vegetables, and bundles of soft furs. Sarah emerged from her cabin, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight that greeted her. She had never seen so many people gathered in one place, and the sight of the gifts made her feel a bit uncomfortable. She wasn't used to receiving such attention. Chief Many Trees stepped forward, his voice clear and strong. "Sarah," he said, "you have saved the life of our little bear. You have shown us great courage and compassion. We have come to express our gratitude." He gestured towards the gifts. "These are tokens of our appreciation. We offer them to you with humble hearts." The tribe laid the gifts at Sarah's feet, their faces filled with sincerity. They had carefully chosen each item, hoping to convey the depth of their gratitude. Sarah looked at the gifts, then at the faces of the tribe. She was touched by their generosity, but she knew that she couldn't accept them. She hadn't acted out of a desire for reward. She had simply done what she thought was right. She took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I am honored by your kindness, but I cannot accept these gifts. I did not save Little Bear for reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Her words hung in the air, surprising the tribe. They had expected her to gratefully accept their gifts, but instead, she was refusing them. They wondered what she truly wanted. What could they possibly offer her that she would accept? The answer was about to come, and it would change everything. Chief Many Trees stepped forward, his eyes filled with a newfound respect. He had sensed Sarah's sincerity, her genuine lack of desire for personal gain. He understood now that she was a woman of extraordinary character, a woman who valued compassion above all else. He raised his hand, silencing the murmurs of the tribe. "Sarah," he said, his voice resonating with authority, "you have shown us that your heart is true. You have proven that you are a friend to our people. We offer you something more valuable than any gift. We offer you our loyalty." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "From this day forward," he continued, "the Cherokee tribe pledges its loyalty to you. We will protect you, support you, and stand by you in times of need. We will share our resources with you, and we will consider you one of our own." The tribe murmured in agreement, their faces reflecting their commitment. They had made their decision, and they would stand by it. They had chosen to embrace Sarah, an outsider, as one of their own. Sarah was stunned. She had never expected such an offer. She had come to this land seeking solitude, but now she was being offered a connection to an entire tribe. She knew that accepting their loyalty would change her life forever. It would mean taking on responsibilities, making compromises, and opening herself up to a world she had never known. But she also knew that it was the right thing to do. She had saved Little Bear's life, and in doing so, she had forged a bond with the Cherokee people. She couldn't turn her back on them now. She had to accept their offer, not for herself, but for the sake of their shared future. The weight of their commitment settled on her shoulders, a responsibility she was now ready to bear. A hush fell over the crowd as Sarah considered the chief's words. The weight of their pledge was palpable, a tangible thing in the morning air. She understood that pledging loyalty wasn't just empty words. It was a deep-seated commitment that would shape their interactions and their future. It meant that the Cherokee would consider her safety as important as their own. If she were threatened, they would come to her defense, offering their strength and their skills to protect her. It meant that they would share their knowledge of the land with her, teaching her the secrets of survival and the hidden pathways through the wilderness. It meant that they would offer her their support in times of need, sharing their food, their resources, and their companionship. It also meant that she would have responsibilities to them. She would have to respect their traditions, honor their customs, and listen to their counsel. She would have to be a good neighbor, a trustworthy friend, and a reliable ally. Chief Many-Trees watched her intently, his eyes filled with hope and anticipation. He knew that this was a big decision for her, a decision that would change the course of her life. He trusted that she would make the right choice, not just for herself, but for the sake of their people. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice clear and strong. "I accept your loyalty," she said, her gaze meeting the chief's. "I promise to honor your commitment and to be a worthy ally to the Cherokee people." A collective sigh of relief swept through the crowd. They had made their offer, and she had accepted. A new chapter was about to begin, a chapter filled with challenges, opportunities, and the promise of a shared future. A future where a solitary frontierswoman and a proud tribe would stand together, united by a bond of loyalty and respect. With Sarah's acceptance, the bond between her and the Cherokee solidified. The pledge of loyalty wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was a living, breathing agreement that manifested in their daily lives. The Cherokee began to subtly incorporate Sarah into their community. They showed her the best places to hunt, sharing their knowledge of animal trails and migration patterns. They taught her how to identify edible plants and medicinal herbs, expanding her understanding of the forest's bounty. They even started teaching her their language, patiently correcting her pronunciation and explaining the nuances of their culture. In return, Sarah shared her own skills and knowledge with the tribe. She taught them how to improve their hunting techniques, how to build stronger shelters, and how to treat certain illnesses with the limited resources she had. She showed them how to read the stars, how to predict the weather, and how to navigate using a compass. Little Bear, in particular, became her constant companion. He followed her everywhere, eager to learn from her and to help her in any way he could. He saw her as a hero, a protector, and a friend. He was determined to repay her kindness by becoming her most loyal and devoted ally. The tribe's protection extended beyond mere words. Warriors would patrol the area around Sarah's cabin, ensuring her safety from wild animals and potential threats. They would bring her fresh game and firewood, making sure she had everything she needed to survive. They treated her with respect and consideration, always mindful of her needs and her preferences. Sarah, in turn, began to feel a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She had finally found a place where she was accepted, valued, and loved. She had found a family, and she knew that together they could face any challenge that came their way. The wilderness, once a symbol of her solitude, now echoed with the laughter and camaraderie of her newfound community. Time flowed like the river that ran through the valley, shaping the landscape of Sarah's life and her relationship with the Cherokee. Seasons turned, bringing with them new challenges and new joys. The initial awkwardness between the solitary frontierswoman and the tight-knit tribe faded, replaced by a deep and abiding friendship. Sarah learned to appreciate the Cherokee's reverence for nature, their strong sense of community, and their unwavering spirit. She participated in their ceremonies, learned their songs, and listened to their stories. She shared her own experiences with them, telling them about the world she had left behind and the reasons why she had chosen to make her home in the wilderness. The Cherokee, in turn, came to admire Sarah's resilience, her self-reliance, and her unwavering commitment to justice. They respected her skills as a hunter, her knowledge of the wilderness, and her willingness to stand up for what she believed in. They saw her as a valuable member of their community, a friend, and an ally. Little Bear grew into a strong and capable young man, his heart filled with gratitude for Sarah and loyalty to his tribe. He became Sarah's right-hand man, assisting her with her chores, accompanying her on her hunts, and protecting her from danger. He was determined to live up to the promise he had made to himself, to repay her kindness in any way he could. Their bond wasn't without its challenges. There were cultural differences to navigate, misunderstandings to overcome, and disagreements to resolve. But through it all, they remained committed to their friendship and to their shared future. They had learned that by working together, they could overcome any obstacle. The wilderness tested them, and their bond grew stronger. And it would need to be, as a new threat was emerging on the horizon, one that would test their newfound alliance to its very core. The benefits of the tribe's loyalty were numerous and tangible. Sarah found that hunting became easier as the Cherokee shared their knowledge of the land and the movements of the animals. They showed her hidden springs and fertile valleys where game was plentiful. They even helped her to build a more secure and comfortable cabin, using their expertise in construction and their access to better materials. When winter arrived, the tribe shared their stores of food with Sarah, ensuring that she had enough to survive the harsh weather. They taught her how to make warm clothing from animal hides and how to build a fire that would keep her cabin warm even on the coldest nights. The Cherokee also acted as her protectors, keeping a watchful eye on her and warning her of any potential dangers. They knew the signs of approaching storms, the tracks of dangerous animals, and the movements of suspicious strangers. They were always there to offer their assistance and their support. Sarah, in turn, used her skills to help the tribe. She shared her knowledge of medicine, treating their wounds and illnesses with her homemade remedies. She taught them how to preserve food, how to make tools, and how to defend themselves against attack. She also acted as a bridge between the Cherokee and the outside world. She helped them to trade with settlers, ensuring that they received fair prices for their goods. She warned them of potential threats from outsiders, and she helped them to negotiate with government officials. Their alliance was a mutually beneficial one, a testament to the power of friendship and respect. They had learned to trust each other, to rely on each other, and to support each other through thick and thin. The once solitary frontierswoman and the proud Cherokee tribe had become an inseparable force, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But the coming storm was unlike anything they had ever faced before. It threatened not only their way of life, but their very existence. The newcomers arrived like a swarm of locusts, their wagons rumbling across the land, their axes felling trees, their presence disrupting the delicate balance of the wilderness. They were settlers, drawn by the promise of land and opportunity, but their arrival brought with it a wave of conflict and destruction. They began to encroach on the Cherokee's territory, claiming land that had been theirs for generations. They hunted the animals that the tribe relied on for sustenance, depleting their resources and threatening their survival. They disrespected the Cherokee's traditions and customs, dismissing them as savages and heathens. Sarah watched with growing concern as the tension between the settlers and the tribe escalated. She knew that a confrontation was inevitable, and she feared the consequences. She had seen the settlers' greed and their ruthlessness, and she knew that they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. She tried to mediate between the two groups, urging the settlers to respect the Cherokee's rights and urging the tribe to remain calm and avoid violence. But her efforts were largely unsuccessful. The settlers were determined to claim the land for themselves, and the Cherokee were determined to protect their heritage. One day, a group of settlers began to clear a forest that was sacred to the Cherokee. They ignored the tribe's protests and continued to chop down the trees, desecrating a site that had been revered for centuries. Little Bear, unable to contain his anger any longer, confronted the settlers. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and a fight broke out. The settlers, armed with guns and axes, quickly overwhelmed the Cherokee warriors. Little Bear was severely wounded, and several other members of the tribe were injured. The incident served as a catalyst for the conflict that had been brewing for so long. The Cherokee, enraged by the settlers' actions, declared war, and Sarah, bound by her loyalty to the tribe, knew that she had to stand by their side. The storm had finally arrived, and she was ready to face it head-on. The war was brutal and unforgiving. The settlers, with their superior weapons and their relentless determination, proved to be a formidable enemy. The Cherokee, though skilled warriors, were outnumbered and outgunned. Sarah, despite her lack of experience in organized warfare, played a crucial role in the tribe's defense. She used her knowledge of the wilderness to scout for the enemy, to set traps, and to guide the warriors through the forest. She shared her expertise in marksmanship, teaching the Cherokee how to improve their accuracy with their bows and arrows. She also provided much-needed medical assistance, tending to the wounded and the sick. She used her knowledge of medicinal herbs to create remedies that eased their pain and helped them to heal. She worked tirelessly day and night to care for the injured and to comfort the dying. Chief Many Trees recognized Sarah's value and relied on her counsel. He knew that she had a clear head and a strong sense of justice, and he trusted her to make wise decisions. He often sought her advice on matters of strategy and diplomacy. Little Bear, now recovered from his wounds, fought alongside Sarah, his loyalty unwavering. He had become a skilled warrior, and he was determined to protect his tribe and to avenge the wrongs that had been committed against them. Despite their best efforts, the Cherokee were gradually losing ground. The settlers continued to pour into the territory, claiming more and more land. The tribe's resources were dwindling, and their morale was flagging. Sarah knew that they couldn't continue fighting this war indefinitely. They needed to find a way to negotiate a peace settlement, to protect their remaining land, and to secure their future. But she also knew that the settlers were unlikely to be reasonable or fair. She needed to find a way to appeal to their sense of humanity, to convince them that there was a better way to resolve this conflict. And she had a plan, a daring and risky plan that could either save her tribe or destroy them completely. Sarah's plan was audacious. She would venture into the settlers' camp, unarmed and alone, and appeal directly to their leaders. She would remind them of their shared humanity, of the values of compassion and justice that they claimed to hold dear. She would offer them a compromise, a way to share the land peacefully and to coexist in harmony. Chief Many Trees was reluctant to allow her to go. He feared for her safety, knowing that the settlers were unpredictable and ruthless. But he also trusted her judgment and her courage. He knew that she was their best hope for a peaceful resolution. Little Bear insisted on accompanying her, but Sarah refused. She knew that her presence would only provoke the settlers and undermine her efforts to negotiate. She had to go alone, relying on her wits and her words to persuade them. Under the cover of darkness, Sarah slipped into the settlers' camp. She walked calmly and confidently, her eyes fixed on the largest tent, where she assumed the leaders were gathered. She reached the tent and announced her presence. The settlers emerged, their faces filled with suspicion and hostility. They recognized her as the woman who had sided with the Cherokee, and they were ready to attack. But Sarah stood her ground, her voice clear and unwavering. "I come to you in peace," she said. "I offer you a chance to end this war, to save lives, and to build a better future for all of us." The settlers hesitated, surprised by her boldness. They listened as she laid out her plan, her words filled with sincerity and conviction. She proposed a division of the land, a treaty of peace, and a commitment to mutual respect. The settlers debated among themselves, their faces reflecting a mixture of skepticism and hope. They knew that Sarah's plan was risky, but they also knew that it was their only chance to avoid a long and bloody war. Finally, their leader stepped forward. "We will consider your proposal," he said, "but we make no promises." Sarah had planted a seed of hope, but she knew that the battle was far from over. She had to wait, patiently and anxiously, to see if her words would bear fruit. The fate of her tribe, and her own, hung in the balance. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from the settlers. The Cherokee grew restless, their patience wearing thin. Some urged Chief Many Trees to launch another attack, to drive the settlers out of their territory once and for all. But Sarah counseled patience. She believed that the settlers were still considering her proposal, and she didn't want to jeopardize their chances of reaching a peaceful agreement. She knew that another attack would only lead to more bloodshed and more suffering. Finally, a messenger arrived from the settlers' camp. He carried a letter for Chief Many Trees, a letter that contained their decision. The tribe gathered around the campfire, their faces filled with anticipation as Chief Many Trees read the letter aloud. The settlers had agreed to Sarah's proposal, but with conditions. They demanded a larger share of the land, and they insisted on maintaining control over the trade routes. The Cherokee were outraged. They felt that the settlers were taking advantage of them, that they were demanding too much. Some were ready to reject the offer outright and resume the war. But Sarah urged them to reconsider. She knew that the settlers' terms were unfair, but she also knew that they were their best hope for a peaceful future. She believed that they could negotiate further, that they could find a compromise that was acceptable to both sides. After much debate, the tribe agreed to give Sarah one more chance to negotiate with the settlers. They would send her back to the camp with instructions to demand better terms. But they warned her that if she failed, they would have no choice but to fight. Sarah returned to the settlers' camp, her heart filled with determination. She knew that the future of her tribe, and her own, depended on her success. She was ready to fight for peace, even if it meant risking everything. This final negotiation would determine whether the bond forged in the wilderness would endure or crumble under the weight of greed and prejudice. This time, Sarah was even more determined. She knew that she couldn't afford to fail. She spent days and nights arguing with the settlers, appealing to their sense of fairness, and reminding them of the consequences of continued conflict. She highlighted the futility of endless war, emphasizing the loss of life and resources on both sides. She spoke of the potential for a prosperous future where both the settlers and the Cherokee could thrive, sharing the land and its bounty. She even shared stories of her own past, revealing her reasons for seeking solace in the wilderness and her growing respect for the Cherokee way of life. Finally, after days of intense negotiations, a breakthrough was reached. The settlers agreed to more equitable terms, granting the Cherokee a larger share of the land and guaranteeing them access to the trade routes. In return, the Cherokee agreed to respect the settlers' boundaries and to maintain peaceful relations. Sarah returned to the tribe, exhausted but triumphant. She presented the agreement to Chief Many Trees, who carefully reviewed its terms. A slow smile spread across his face as he realized that Sarah had succeeded. The tribe celebrated, their joy echoing through the valley. They had secured their future, thanks to Sarah's courage, her wisdom, and her unwavering commitment to peace. The treaty was signed, and the war came to an end. The settlers and the Cherokee began to rebuild their lives, working together to create a better future for their children. Sarah remained with the tribe, a valued member of their community, a friend, and an ally. She had found her place in the world, not as a solitary frontierswoman, but as a leader, a peacemaker, and a symbol of hope. The grizzly bear had inadvertently brought together two disparate groups, and from that unlikely beginning, a lasting peace was forged. And so, the tale of Sarah, the frontierswoman who saved a Cherokee boy from a grizzly bear, became a legend whispered around campfires for generations to come. It was a story of bravery, compassion, and the transformative power of loyalty. Sarah, who had once sought only solitude in the vast wilderness, found a family and a purpose she never could have imagined. Her act of courage had not only saved Little Bear's life, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond between her and the Cherokee people. She had become more than just an ally. She had become a leader, a friend, and a symbol of hope. The Cherokee tribe, in turn, found in Sarah a valuable ally, a fierce protector, and a wise counselor. She had helped them to navigate the challenges of a changing world, to defend their land, and to secure their future. She had taught them the importance of compassion, the value of respect, and the power of unity. Little Bear, who had grown into a strong and capable leader himself, never forgot the debt he owed to Sarah. He carried her teachings with him throughout his life, always striving to uphold her values and to honor her memory. The story of Sarah and the Cherokee was a reminder that even the most unlikely of friendships can blossom in the most challenging of circumstances. It was a testament to the power of compassion to bridge cultural divides and to the strength of loyalty to overcome adversity. It demonstrated that a single act of bravery, driven by a selfless heart, could ripple outward, creating a wave of positive change that could transform not only individual lives, but entire communities. And that, ultimately, is a story worth telling.